Have you ever watched a good person unravel at work? Someone who normally leads with integrity suddenly shuts down, snaps, withdraws, or just acts sharp. And everybody around them start asking, "Who are you?" But the real question might be, what happened to you? That's what I want us to hold on as we look at Job's wife, because sometimes pain speaks louder than our character.
The Bible at Work with Dr. Shalini Jebasingh.
Hi, I'm Shalini. When we open the book of Job, we see that Job was a very wealthy man and a very famous man. He had 1,000 to 10,000 sheep, camels, oxen, and 500 donkeys, and he worked with integrity, and his business capacity was exceptionally high. His livestock assets tell us that he probably had a very large number of people working for him. He was also likely the owner of thousands of acres of land, and his business had a high volume output. In today's terms, Job would have been called an honest businessman with a multi-million-dollar turnover year after year. But here, in this episode, we are going to look at Mrs. Job, the woman who had it all. But before we dive in, I want to share a short clip on how Job and his wife might have lived when we were first introduced to them.
Truly, my love, your wit is sharper than any blade in the house.
And your stories are longer than the journey to Sheba, old man.
God has truly blessed us.
He has indeed, my love.
In our study, we will move between Job chapter 2 and chapter 1 and then to the end of Job. Only one sentence of Job's wife is recorded in the book of Job, and it is in chapter 2. But she has been harshly judged by many Bible scholars for that one sentence. If you've read Job before, withhold your judgment on Mrs. Job for just a little bit. In chapter 1, we see that Job lived in Uz, which is Jordan, present-day Jordan. And in Job's time, livestock like camel, sheep, oxen, and donkeys were wealth-creating assets. They were used for trade, transportation, plowing the field, food, and for wool. Job wasn't just rich, he was ultra rich. And he appears to have a good home and family life. He had 10 children. And when I read Job 1:4, it sounds like his children enjoyed being together and he loved it. In verses 5, we read that if Job even thought that his children might have sinned, he went and offered sacrifices for them and asked God's forgiveness. He wanted his children to have a good relationship with God. Everything was going well in Job's family. And then the unimaginable happened. God delights in Job, but allows Satan to bring havoc into his life. And the wreckage, it comes very fast. In verses 14 to 19, we see that Sabean raiders steal his ox and his donkeys. And they kill all his workers there, except one, who escapes to bring the news to Job. Then his sheep are destroyed in a fire that fell from heaven. And again, all his workers die, except one who comes to Job. Then another enemy group, the Chaldeans, come and take his camels. And yet again, all the workers are killed, except one who brings the news to Job. And while Job is still processing all of this, a strong wind hits the house where his children were gathered, and the house collapses. All 10 of his children and everyone in the house dies, except one who comes to tell Job. The tragedies come from different sources: human violence, natural disaster, and structural failure. And they come in rapid succession. If you've heard the military phrase, shock and awe, this mirrors that. Before you can fully register what is happening, it's all over. The takedown is complete. This is what Job and his wife experienced. But they didn't know it was a takedown. They did not know that they were caught in the middle of a spiritual warfare that was happening behind the scenes. They just had no category to classify what they were experiencing. And standing closest to Job in all of the pain and the confusion and the chaos and the bewilderment was Job's wife. Soon after, in chapter 2, we read that Satan attacks again. This time, the target is Job's body. He breaks out in painful boils from the head to his toe. Verse 6 tells us that God allowed this too. So Job's wife, already grieving her children, their employees, their livelihood, now watches her husband suffer intensely. And this is where we enter Job 2:9. And she says, "Do you still hold tightly to your integrity?" Now notice what she does first. She sees Job for who he truly is, a man of integrity. The only other one who speaks this about Job is God himself. But then she adds, "Curse God and die." Her words are painful to hear. And yes, her words could have pushed Job towards despair. But this is the voice of a woman in catastrophic grief, watching the person she loves suffer without any relief in sight. Job responds with the strength that he probably did not even feel he had. He says, "Shall we accept good from God and not hardship?" Then he tells her not to speak like one of those foolish women. The Hebrew word used here is nabal. It is the same word we read in Psalm 14:1. The fool says in his heart, "There is no God." It is not about intelligence or knowledge. It is about moral or spiritual lack. It's about living as if God is not there. But Job does not label his wife as godless. He calls out her words, not her character. He addresses her speech, not her identity. That is, Job recognizes her statement as a deviation from who she normally is. It's an anomaly. It is not her true self. Now, contrast that with Job's friends. They respond very differently. They insist that Job has done something evil for this kind of targeted suffering to come to him. They start preaching instead of comforting. And at the end of the book, God rebukes the three friends, but not Job. Also, God does not mention Job's wife or Elihu, the young associate who came with Job's three friends to meet Job. And then God tells Job's friends, "I'm angry with you because you have not spoken the truth about me as my servant Job has." In Jeremiah 17:10, God says, "I, the Lord, search all hearts and examine secret motives." God knows our hearts. God knows our motives. God saw that Job's friends lied about Job, but more importantly, they did that because they were lying about God. Job did not, and Job's wife did not. So nowhere in the book of Job does God treat Job's wife like a villain. God knows what she was going through. You see, when pain becomes unbearable, pain can speak louder than our true character. And that is why a trauma-informed lens helps us to understand Job's wife with wisdom and compassion and truth. One reason why we misjudge Job's wife and people who go through trauma is because we confuse a person's trait with their state. A trait is a consistent pattern of character over time. A state is a temporary way of functioning, often under exhaustion, grief, critical stress, or trauma. Job's wife was under unimaginable stress. Her children had suddenly died. Their workers had suddenly died. Their livelihood was gone. Her husband was covered in painful boils. Her stability was shattered. Given those circumstances, it's very likely that she was speaking from a state of trauma. That one statement did not reveal her character. Unfortunately, we do this all the time. A child in an abusive home becomes the problem kid. A traumatized spouse is dismissed as crazy. A stressed leader is labeled as uncaring. When we mislabel a state as a trait, we perpetuate trauma and we remove safety for the traumatized. Now, at the same time, trauma does not excuse harm. Pain explains behavior, but it does not justify it. So the question becomes, how do we apply this at work? First, remember this. At work, when someone who normally lives with integrity and leads with integrity comes under extreme stress, grief, or trauma in their personal life, they need support. Sometimes they need that support for a long time. Here, I'm reminded of James Autry, former CEO of Meredith Corporation. His art director was diagnosed with terminal cancer and asked if he could keep working while hospitalized. He told Autry that working gave him the drive to live. Autry agreed. It was before computers had come, so the team brought layouts to the hospital and he worked. You can read more about this in Autry's book. Then, if you are a leader or team member who loves God and wants to live rightly, and suddenly life hits you with overwhelming blows, and you notice yourself shutting down, becoming irritable, withdrawing, or snapping, know this. You may be in a state-based response. Your nervous system is trying to protect you. God created our fight, flight, freeze, and collapse responses. He understands them fully. A state-based reaction does not erase your character or your history of faithful leadership. So don't spiral into shame or despair. Instead, turn to God honestly and say, God, I'm hurting and my pain is spilling onto others. Help me to stop harming others and help me to heal. Then choose healing. Don't push your pain down. Choose your support group wisely and choose your healing. Choose your therapist, your psychiatrist, your critical stress coach, or a core group of people to help you. Let them be people who treat you with love, truth, respect, and as their equal. If you sense manipulation or a lack of honesty, move away from them and find a right team or right providers. Seeking help is not a weakness. It's responsible leadership and responsible team membership. Second, remember this too. If someone is operating from trauma responses, the people around them still need safety. So if you're on the other side working with someone acting out of trauma, pause and observe. Ask yourself, is this consistent with who they usually are, or is this a departure from their normal character? If it appears to be a state-based action, show kindness, but set boundaries drawn out of care for yourself and for them. Job did this. He spoke truth without shaming his wife, and he did not accept his wife's harmful speech. At work, try the 4 C's, adapted from Schwartz's internal family system. Talk to this person with clarity, calmness, compassion, and courage. You can say, I hear how much pressure you're under, and I want to support you. But it's difficult to move forward when communications shut down or emotions take over. Let's pause and return when things are calmer. That protects your identity, dignity, and safety. That's loving yourself. But here is the danger zone. If behavior becomes verbally aggressive, intimidating, volatile, or physically unsafe, and especially if it becomes a pattern, move away. At that point, you're not dealing with a momentary state. You're dealing with an unsafe environment. Now, if you are the leader and someone's unresolved trauma continues to harm others, there may come a time when you must let them go. Let them go graciously and truthfully. Joel Manby talks about this in his book, Love Works. He shares about a senior executive he had to let go after many attempts at trying to help them, including helping them with treatment for alcoholism. Compassion is not keeping someone in a role that is harming someone else. The bottom line is this: don't be afraid to do the right thing, whether that means pursuing your healing or drawing healthy boundaries. Trust God to take care of you and do the right thing, and God will take care of you. We end here today. If you liked this episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or follow us on Facebook and Instagram. I Would love to hear back from you. We would love to connect with you and learn from your work experience. So do share it with us and drop your comments below. And as always, I wish you the best work life.
Thank you for joining us at the Bible at Work with Dr. Shalini Jebasingh. We will see you in the next episode.